Well, it's been close to a year since the release of Sonic Frontiers, along with it also being 10 months since my 86-minute review of the game released back in December. For those of you who didn't want to sit through all that, to summarize my final thoughts, I thought Sonic Frontiers was a pretty decent game, but it just had a lot of jank in it, and I also just didn't find the game that replayable. Seriously, since releasing that review, I haven't really touched the game much, especially not in comparison to some of my other favorite Sonic games. But in the review, I also made mention of how Sonic Team were planning to release 3 big updates for the game in the future, with all of them releasing in 2023. Update 1 arrived in March, Update 2 came in June, also around the time Origins Plus released, and the third and final update finally arrived this past September. For this video, I'm going to be looking at all 3 updates, what they brought to the table, what else about the game got changed, along with mentioning any issues I had with the new content, or just with the game in general. With that said, let's jump right into update number 1. Sight, Sounds, and Speed was released back in March, and it's probably the most basic update for the game. Looking at the content in the original order that the roadmap laid out, the game now has a jukebox containing several tracks from previous games. You have to find the audio tracks on the islands themselves, but after that, you can run around while cycling through the songs by tapping right on the D-pad, and holding right will bring up the full list of songs that you can scroll through. The next big addition to this update was photo mode. I personally don't use photo modes in games, but I definitely get the appeal for them, and I'm not against this feature being here at all. It can be pretty fun, and they're great for open world games like this. 2 other additions in this update were Battle Rush and Cyberspace Challenge, with Battle Rush involving you fighting off all the main island enemies and the titans from their respective islands. It's a pretty great addition. Cyberspace Challenge is also a good feature, and I'm sure the people who like cyberspace were happy that this got added to the game. I just personally have zero interest in replaying the cyberspace levels again, but it's still a good mode to have. This update was pretty solid, but being perfectly honest, basically every piece of content in Sight, Sounds, and Speed really should have been part of the base game at the start. It almost seems like they were rushing to get the game out and had no choice but to cut these basic features. Regardless, I'm happy they're in the game now, and it's also been several months since the update dropped, so there's no real point in complaining. That's all for this update, so let's move on to the next one. If the title and release didn't already suggest it, the main focus for this update was for celebrating Sonic's birthday in June, with the game adding in these really cute birthday cosmetics, including adding these birthday balloons in the backgrounds, customized the HUD a little, and also gave Sonic a new outfit to wear. But focusing on the gameplay elements, one of the biggest updates was a New Game Plus feature. Kinda like photo modes, I don't really fuck around with New Game Plus features in modern games, but again, I'm not really against it being here either, and it's good for people who are into these type of modes, so I'm happy either way. A big addition to this update are the open zone challenges, which you can find on 4 of the islands. They're just fun little challenges you can do to rack up points until you get an S rank. But is there any reason for you to do these challenges? Yes, actually. Getting the S rank in every open zone challenge on each island will let Sonic unlock a new move. Or a returning move, I should say. It's the Spin Dash. I think the first time it was in a mainline 3D Sonic game since fucking Sonic Lost World, which was, 10 fucking years ago. So yes, they brought back the Spin Dash, and it's pretty interesting. Basically, you hold down the left trigger and then you hold B, which will charge up the Spin Dash, and letting go of B will launch Sonic. And when I say launch, I mean it will launch Sonic. It's pretty goddamn powerful. It's almost like having a secondary boost. Oftentimes, I'd find myself using the Spin Dash over the regular boost because you can literally activate it by running for a bit and holding the left trigger, similar to the boost. So you don't have to stand still to use the Spin Dash. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that, but at the same time, it's fucking fun to use, so why complain? Though for some of you who want to use the Spin Dash but are probably struggling to get the S ranks in the open zone challenges, I'd recommend going into the pause menu and switching the game to easy, because it'll make it way easier to get the S ranks. Also, remember back in Sonic Lost World where while that game had its own Spin Dash, if you held the crouch button you can just make Sonic roll around in a little ball? Well, you can do that in Frontiers now too if you just hold the left trigger and let Sonic roll around for a bit. It's a pointless ass feature, just like it was in Lost World, but I just just love doing the little roll. It's cute. Oh yeah, when it comes to the boost gauge, there's also a new upgrade you can get for it thanks to the new Cocos. If you find one of these special new Cocos and bring them to the Elder Coco, he'll expand your boost gauge by a small bit. It's pretty neat and I like it. I also like how one of the new Cocos I found was holding Excalibur from Sonic and the Black Knight. It's a cute reference. And yeah, that was basically update 2. It was great to have the spin dash again, and just overall, a lot of good improvements were brought to the game. Okay, pretty much everyone who clicked on this video are probably like, Cooper, we're well aware of the previous 2 updates. They came out months ago and you are late to the party. We don't care. Alright, without further ado, let's get to talking about the third and final big update for the game. Update 3, The Final Horizon, was probably the biggest and most exciting update for the game that everyone was waiting for. It promised new playable characters and a new story, written by Ian Flynn, who wrote the main story. You access it by going through a new pathway at the start of Aronis Island, which is where the entirety of the DLC takes place. Presented as sort of an alternate ending to the game, as Sonic arrives on the island, he gets stopped by Eggman and Sage. Sage suggests that they take a different route and have Sonic's friends help collect the emeralds, rather than Sonic collecting them by himself. And yeah, that's the basic premise. The game cuts to Amy, Knuckles, and Tails running about the island trying to get the emeralds for Sonic. And I guess this is where I'll take a look at the new characters aspect of this DLC, which was the main portion I was looking forward to checking out the most. If you haven't already noticed, the Final Horizon DLC finally gives fans the ability to play as Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, and the first time they've been playable in a mainline 3D game in the series since Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Oh my god, it's been 17 years! And you know, the last times we got to play as these guys, it wasn't too great. But thankfully, Frontiers does not disappoint. While all 3 characters use the same gameplay style as Sonic, they all still have unique abilities that not all of them share. Going in the order the DLC makes you play as them, the first character is Amy. Amy's main gimmick are her fortune cards, classic lore taken right from Sonic CD's instruction manual, which had also been making appearances in recent media, most notably Sonic Origins. As you upgrade Amy, you can get her the ability to strike enemies using her cards, but she can also use the homing attack, and later on she could even spin dash. While this isn't the first official game to have Amy using the spin dash, Origins Plus beat it by about 3 months, this is the first 3D Sonic game to let Amy use the spin dash, so that's still pretty cool. The one downside you're gonna have to get over is that all 3 characters have to level up their stats all the way again. But thankfully the game does have a quicker method to do this. This comes in the form of Starfall Plus, a new version of the occasional Starfall that appears during nighttime. Starfall Plus lets you collect Cocos and other items that you'll need to level up your stats. The values here can multiply and seriously stack up, so if you get super lucky, you can max out all your stats for these characters really fast. It's super convenient and really cool, along with the one update they made for the Elder Coco, where you can now level up your speed and rings all at once, which is a feature that a previous update added, and it's so damn useful. A complete time saver too. But getting back to Amy, one neat move that she can use her cards for is a glide, which you can activate after pressing jump 3 times. It's such a useful move for platforming segments, along with just using it to travel across the island in the air, which is what I mainly did. You could still fight enemies to gain skill points, but you can also come across these new color-based Cocos on the island, which can give you skill points depending on which character you are, which is super helpful. Well, Amy's gameplay is really solid, but if there is one nitpick I do have with her, it's while the cards are a nice aesthetic and are helpful for fighting enemies, I can't help but miss her hammer, which is still in the game and you can unlock it for special moves, but I really miss it being her main form of attack like in SA1. But still, Amy was fun to play as again, so I was still pretty satisfied. The next playable character is Knuckles, and his gameplay is a bit more rough compared to Amy, and Tails for that matter. Knuckles can use the homing attack and can unlock the spin dash, but when it comes to his own unique game mechanics, both his gliding and wall crawling were brought back. That actually caught me off guard at first. Knowing the current Sonic team, I didn't think they were gonna go this extra mile, but I was still pretty happy to see Knuckles' signature moves return. But with that in mind, there is a bit of jank when it comes to how Knuckles plays. The gliding can work pretty well if you're just moving forward. It's the turning where it feels really rough, and it can often get in the way sometimes when you're trying to platform. I also don't understand why when you activate the glide, Knuckles does this weird animation before going into it. Why does he need to do that? One of the neat things about this move since Sonic 3 and Knuckles is how he instantly goes into gliding. It's how it worked in both adventure games. Hell, even Sonic 06 got that part right. Jesus. And when it comes to the wall crawling, Knuckles can't climb every wall he comes across, since, you know, that would severely break the game, so he can only climb specifically made walls, kinda similar to Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, but let's just pretend that game doesn't exist and also isn't turning 10 next year. What the fuck? The walls that Knuckles can climb function fine, but I sorta had a difficult time understanding how to get Knuckles to stick to the wall. I'd usually just boost into them while in midair, because just jumping at them didn't seem to work all the time. Not only that, but the wall crawling controls are a bit jank too. Knuckles can move pretty damn fast while he's on the walls, especially when you level up his speed more. And one of the big issues is that once he comes in contact with a surface that's not glowing red, he'll start sliding down. Even if he comes in contact with a red wall again, he'll just continue sliding, leading to you having to fiddle with the controls for a bit, which can be pretty damn annoying if you're just trying to travel upwards. Plus, the camera can be super irritating during these parts, and if you don't angle it correctly, it can really fuck you up. When looking back at all three characters, Knuckles is probably the main one with the most gameplay issues. Having both his glide and wall crawling back are great, but I really hope some of the more jank elements get ironed out in a future patch. And I know I'm not the only one who had an issue with his gameplay, since a lot of fans were also complaining about it on social media. But I also really hope Sega doesn't see all those complaints and misinterprets them as people not wanting to play as Knuckles, because that's really not the case. Despite these issues, I really did have fun playing as Knuckles again, and I do hope these slight issues can be fixed. And while the gliding isn't very perfect, it could still be used to break the game sometimes, especially when trying to get past certain sections. Plus, Knuckles' main combo move is the uppercut move from the previous games, which was a really cool callback. So yeah, there's a bit of jank, but I still enjoyed playing as Knuckles again. After him, we get the final playable character, Tails. Tails was a pretty pleasant surprise for me. While he could use the spin dash like the others, he doesn't use the homing attack. Instead, Tails' main form of attack is throwing wrenches. It's interesting, but also effective. Plus, I feel like most people will probably prefer this move over the ring attack from 06 and even Heroes. But not only does Tails have that, but his flying move was also brought back, and this was pulled off extremely well. Holding down the jump button, he will ascend slightly higher up and can fly around for a short time before tiring out. Honestly, this might be the best game in the series to really pull off Tails' flying in 3D. And pretty similar to his flying in the 2D games, it can really break a lot of the game's platforming segments. Pretty similar to Amy's card glide and Knuckles', well, glide. Not only that, but Tails can also throw wrenches while flying, which is awesome. While I don't mind Tails' wrenches, I really wish they brought back Tails' spin attack from Adventure 1. It's so weird how this move was only ever used in the Adventure games, since Tails can even use it in SA2's Chow Garden. It sucks, but whatever, I guess. Tails was still a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed his gameplay, especially for one gameplay element that really makes it a million times better. One thing I didn't mention about these characters is that as you level them up, you can have them unlock these unique max boost modes. Amy can get this cool boost where she's riding her hammer like a witch, while rolling around in a card circle. Knuckles' max boost is pretty basic since he just turns into a drill, but Tails' max boost is actually pretty damn cool. His max boost gives him the ability to use the Tornado 3 Cyclone from SA2. It's such a neat bonus, and this is also like the first game appearance of the Tornado 3 in like 2 decades. You can drive it around like an actual vehicle and also use it to fly in the air. So if you already thought that Tails' flying was pretty broken, just wait until you unlock the Cyclone. You can even unlock its laser blast attack too. Holy shit, this is fucking awesome. I'm really glad they brought the Cyclone back like this. I've literally spent a huge portion of this DLC just driving and flying around in this thing. It's so damn fun. Overall, the 3 playable characters were not a disappointment like I was initially worried they'd be. They're basically just unique iterations of Sonic's main gameplay, which, let's be real, that's really all fans want from different characters in these games. They play super similar to Sonic, but just have their own unique spins, which is exactly what the classic games did. While there were some jank aspects, especially for Knuckles, for the most part, these characters were a lot of fun to play as again, and I kinda hope they get similar outfits to what Sonic got in previous DLC. I also understand why they're still presented as these projections of the characters, but I'd also like an option to play as them without the filter on their models. Not a huge deal though. Moving on to other things in the DLC, after you finish playing as the new characters, the game has you play as Sonic again. One funny thing is that if you're playing through this DLC for the first time, but you didn't get the spin dash normally, you know, through the open zone challenges, then the game will just automatically give you the move once you reach this point in the DLC. Almost like making the move an unlockable was kinda pointless. Whatever. Sonic's main objective here is to climb these really tall towers in order to reach certain Cocos, who each give Sonic a different trial to do. There's about 5 towers that Sonic has to climb here, and really the main issue with them is that if you slip up and fall, it is a long way down. Unlike the original game where it cut you some slack and gave you a zipline that shot you all the way back up, you don't get that here. The towers and trials aspect of this DLC are easily the most difficult parts of the game. Not only because climbing up the towers can be super time consuming, but the trials that the Cocos can put you through are some of the most challenging parts of the game. Basically, in the trials, you have to try defeating really strong enemies all while your stats are taken away, so you're basically at your weakest. It is insanely difficult. But the way I got past these trials was by using the parry move. The parry can really save your ass here, especially in the first 2 trials. Yeah, trial and error are a huge aspect for these challenges, which can kind of alienate some players who are going to find this extremely difficult. But if you have the patience for it, you will get past the trials. But I will say, I only really had issues with the first 2 trials. Trials 3 and 4 were insanely short in comparison, and that's all because of the parry move. It can help you get through the trials super quick. Even the 3rd and 4th towers were much easier to climb up in comparison to the first 2. Well, for me at least. Tower 2 was really irritating. However, the 5th and final trial is definitely the toughest one, which is presented by the Master King Coco. This Coco has you face off against the first 3 Titans, once again without all your stats, and he doesn't give you any more rings to collect. Yup, you have to beat all 3 Titan battles as Super Sonic with no stats, no additional rings to collect, and you have to do it as fast as possible before you run out. Just like with the previous trials, the parry move is recommended to use, but this trial actually throws a curveball here. You can still use the parry, but it has to be a perfect parry, meaning you have to get the timing just right when parrying the Titans, which, you know, for normal people, can be kind of fucking difficult to get the hang of. I'm gonna be real and a little petty, but I fucking hate smug Sonic fans who try to act like the perfect parrying is really easy, because they've been able to do it just fine because they've replayed the game a million times and mastered the mechanics to a T. Meanwhile, they tease other people like me who don't play this game religiously and end up struggling. So to those fans that are watching and are about to make fun of me and other normal people for not mastering the perfect parry because we have lives outside of playing the same video game over and over again, please shut the fuck up. No one likes you when you act like that. Perfect parries are super difficult to pull off, and most often or not, I'd miss the timing and end up losing the damn trial multiple times. You have to get this run perfect, especially on hard mode, so you cannot risk missing perfect parries, land every combo you can, and also don't get hit and lose rings before you turn into Super Sonic. Yes, the difficulty mode, which I made fun of in my initial review, actually means something in this DLC. So much so that I needed to switch to easy just to beat the master trials. Look, make fun of me all you guys want, but it was either I do that, or I just don't make this video looking at all the new content. Fuck this trial, fuck the other trials too, and fuck the fanbase. These are absolutely the worst parts of this final DLC, and I never want to replay them again. But climbing up the towers and getting through the trials are a little worth it, because this will lead to the game's new final boss, which is a million times better than the original final boss. And before the worst side of the Sonic fanbase continues bitching, yes, I switched the game back to hard mode before starting the fight. Well, first the game has you fight the Supreme Titan as the first phase again, again, which is still a pretty fun fight. Short as hell too, considering you have all your stats again. After you defeat the Titan, the end appears from above and plugs itself into Supreme. Unlike the original final boss where it was just some generic shooter that lasted way too long, this new The End battle is actually grand, challenging, and a lot of fun. You mainly have to keep hitting the Titan's head over and over again, but I'd recommend unplugging the Titan from the end first, which you can do by attacking the head and then tapping the shoulder buttons while striking so you could switch to the plug. It only lasts temporarily, so you might have to do that a few times. While I think this fight is a lot of fun and a far better finale to the game compared to the original boss, I will admit the first time I fought this boss was a little tricky. First off, figuring out that you have to unplug the Supreme Titan away from the end took a while to figure out. Plus, whenever you get the Titan down to 0 health, you'd assume that's the end. But it's not. You see, after you get the Titan on the ground unplugged, you gotta do a side loop combo on its back, which will cause Supreme's gun to appear, and you'll also need to go side loop that too so a cutscene can be triggered. If you don't do that, you'll end up repeating the same shit over and over again, completely confused as to why the boss just never ends, and you'll also keep running out of rings and having to restart. It's a little confusing, and I even had to look up a damn guide to figure out how to beat the boss. Like, you ever tried to look up a playthrough for new content in a video game that no one else has really played yet? It's not easy. Not only that, but one attack that the end can send at you are these orbs, which you have to perfect parry back to the Titan. And if you don't parry correctly, the orbs are gonna decrease Sonic's ring count, which obviously means if you're not careful, you're gonna lose the fight. It happened to me a few times, but after beating the boss for the first time, I never really ran into that issue again. I even managed to pull off a few perfect parries on the orbs, which caught me off guard. I guess failing and just trying again really helps. Yeah, as you may have noticed, trial and error design is pretty prevalent with this DLC, and it's not great. It could almost come off as if the developers barely beta tested the game before releasing this. Like, how did they not realize that parts like this can be really difficult for non-hardcore Sonic fans to play through? Not everyone has mastered the mechanics of this game. So, no, to the smug Sonic fans, it's not easy, you're just good at it. Now please go away. Even then, I saw a Sonic fan on social media who threw their controller at their TV over the DLC, so I guess the difficulty issue is just something that affects everyone. Also, maybe gamer rage isn't all that funny after all. I know I've done the angry gamer shtick in my videos, but that's usually me hemming it up. I don't really care that much about video games. But holy shit, guys! Maybe take a break from the game if it's making you this angry, like so rageful that you'll end up breaking hundreds of dollars worth of tech? Keep track of your mental health, and stop playing video games if they make you this upset. Consider seeking anger management before you touch a controller again. Please? Alright, tangent over. But, oh yeah, another issue I had with the boss fight was that these trees kept getting in the way of seeing the fight. Even after playing through the fight a second and third time, the trees kept getting in the way. It can be really irritating. How did they miss that? Just another theory that they probably didn't beta test this DLC that much. I also wonder if they rushed this out too. Whatever, weird ass design choices aside, the final battle is still a lot of fun, and again, it's a much better way to close out the game. And when looking at the ending, I found it kind of funny how Super Sonic gets all bruised up real bad, but when he transforms back to normal in the next cutscene, he looks completely fine. So I guess that was a thing. At the very least, I do like that this DLC gives Sage a much happier ending, where she doesn't sacrifice herself and gets to leave with Eggman. So that's nice. Though I might be a little lost, but is this the new canon ending? Is Sage gonna appear in the next game just fine? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Also, I still have the same opinions on the voice acting like I did in my original review, so I'm not gonna waste your guys' time with that again. The game ends with a new vocal song, and by new, I mean they took the original final boss music, which was known as I'm With You, and they made a new version of it with vocals on it. It doesn't sound too bad, and it's a nice addition to the rest of the game's vocal tracks. Yeah, I guess looking at that, the expansion soundtrack is a really nice treat, but I don't have too much to really say about it. It's neat that we got more music for this game, along with cool remixes. And I really like the music when you're playing as Amy and Knuckles, especially Knuckles. It's a very lo-fi and chill sounding track. I also like that this new soundtrack release gave us the official instrumental tracks for the vocal themes, which is always nice to get. Am I missing something? Oh yeah, there were new cyberspace levels, huh? I didn't really bother. Sorry, I didn't really like the original ones, so why would I play the new ones? The remixes sound nice, but I just have no interest in looking into the actual levels. So feel free to call me a hack fraud, a fake fan, a complete loser, a freaking idiot, whatever, I'm moving on. After you beat the DLC, you can still boot up your save file for the content and continue playing as the new characters with the character swap mechanic, but there's two issues I have with it. First off, you can only play as the new characters in the DLC story mode, but not the normal one. I know some fans are gonna be like, yeah, no shit, idiot, but I'm just a little disappointed that we can't play as Amy, Knuckles, or Tails on other islands besides Uranus. Did no one else have an issue with that? The second big issue is that you can only swap characters using the Master Coco on top the 5th tower, and it could be a complete pain in the ass having to run back to the tower over and over again just so you could switch. Thankfully, when you get to the top of that tower, you can activate a switch that gives you a zipline straight back up. This is the only tower in the DLC that gives you that. So while getting back up to the Master Coco can be quick, I still wish the game gave us an option to switch characters on the map screen or something, cause I really don't like needing to run back to the Master Coco all the time. And that's kind of it for all the DLC. As a whole, I think it's great that Sonic Team continued to support this game for nearly a year after its launch, and I'm also happy for all the fans who really loved this game getting all these neat updates and quality of life improvements. The new content definitely makes the game way better to play, and I love that it gave us the opportunity to play as different characters in a main Sonic game after such a long time, you know, in 3D. However, I wouldn't really say this was enough to really get me to keep coming back to play this game. Obviously, I've made the 86-minute review, this follow-up video, and even played through the DLC twice just for this review, but I just don't really see myself coming back to this game much in the future. Plus, knowing how Sega and Sonic Team usually operate, they're most likely done supporting this game, aside from the usual update where they'll patch glitches or other jank aspects, and I'm gonna assume they're just gonna move on after this and make the next Sonic game. Also, in my original review, I brought up how it was pretty cool that Kashimoto was super active on Twitter, and I mentioned how his interactions with fans could really help bring attention to what parts of the game need to be ironed out. Well, because this fanbase is a huge fucking mess, we can't really do that anymore, since the fans ruined it by freaking out over him liking certain things on social media, which was just incredibly stupid for them to flip out over, and even led to Sega making a pretty important post referring to how fans have been harassing their employees. It's insane. Trying to ignore all that, Sonic Frontiers is still a decent game in the series, and all of its DLC has been pretty great, but this just personally isn't one of my top favorite games that I'll go back to play like Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2, Heroes, Unleashed, Generations even. Yes, I have certain preferences, but I still maintain a lot of the positive opinions I had on this game back in my initial review. I love the open world concept, and I'd like to see the series continue expanding on this idea. I hope the next modern Sonic game is a great improvement on this one, and if all the recent DLC has been any indication, I have a decent amount of confidence in how the next game's gonna play out. I'd especially love to see Amy, Knuckles, and Tails playable in the next game from the start, and hopefully the reception to the Final Horizon and the very soon to be released Sonic Superstars will help show Sega and Sonic Team that we want to play as more than just Sonic. Again, just do what they did with this DLC. Just iron out all the jank, and continue finding new ways to utilize their gameplay so the games can be more fun, along with improving the replay value for fans like me. That's all I've really got to say for now. Go check out Sonic Frontiers if you haven't, and have fun with all the downloadable content too. I hope you all enjoyed watching this brief return to Sonic Frontiers. I'm very much looking forward to Sonic Superstars releasing incredibly soon. I will see you all in the next review, and thanks for watching.